I should have realized something was weird the third time Kyle returned one of my packages. The first time, I thought he was just being a good neighbor. The second time, I thought the delivery driver had screwed up again. By the fourth package, I finally had to admit that there was no way this was an accident. And the embarrassing part, by then, I was already looking forward to seeing him. My name is Joseph, and this happened a few months after I moved into a small apartment complex on the edge of town. I was 26, working remotely for a marketing company, and honestly, the move had been mostly about getting away from my old place. Nothing dramatic had happened there. I just needed a change. The new apartment was cheaper, quieter, and had an actual balcony, which felt like a luxury after spending 2 years staring at a brick wall outside my bedroom window. The building itself was nothing special. 3 floors, beige walls, a tiny parking lot, and one of those entrances where the hallway always smelled faintly like somebody had just cooked onions. But it was peaceful, and for the first couple of weeks, I barely knew anyone. That changed when Kyle moved into the apartment next to mine. I noticed him before I actually met him. I was coming back from the grocery store one Saturday afternoon, struggling with 2 bags cutting into my fingers, when I saw a guy standing beside a U-Haul truck in the parking lot. He was carrying a cardboard box against his chest. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair that looked like he'd run his hand through it 100 times. He was wearing a faded gray t-shirt and jeans, nothing remarkable. But somehow he still managed to look like the guy everybody notices without meaning to. I would have walked right past him if he hadn't looked over. "Hey," he said. I stopped. "Hey." He nodded toward my apartment building. "You live here?" I laughed. "That depends. Are you with the landlord?" He smiled. "No, just moved into 2B. I glanced at my door. "I'm 2A. His eyebrows lifted. "Seriously?" "Apparently we're neighbors." He looked toward the apartment doors, then back at me. "Well, that's either really convenient or really unfortunate." "Why?" "Because I don't know if I'm going to like you yet." I laughed. "Good. I was worried we'd have to be friends immediately." That got a bigger smile out of him. "I'm Kyle." "Joseph." We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm, and lasted maybe half a second longer than necessary. At least, that's how I remembered it. Then he looked down at my grocery bags. "You need help?" "I'm good." "You sure?" "Yeah." "Okay." He picked up his box and started walking toward the building. Then he stopped and looked back. "Joseph?" "Yeah?" "Nice meeting you." "Same." That should have been it. A normal introduction between 2 neighbors. Except I noticed myself watching him walk away. And I immediately hated myself for it. I'd had enough experience with attractive straight guys to know better than to invent possibilities where there weren't any. Kyle looked straight. Very straight. He had that casual confidence some guys had when they knew exactly who they were. He wasn't shy or awkward. He talked easily, joked with the maintenance guy, and seemed comfortable around everyone. So I filed him away under attractive neighbor I should absolutely not develop a crush on. Simple. Except then my packages started disappearing. The first one happened on a Tuesday. I was working at my desk when I got a notification that my delivery had arrived. I went downstairs maybe 20 minutes later. Nothing. I checked the front entrance. Nothing. I checked beside the mailboxes. Nothing. I even looked behind one of the big plants because I'd once had a delivery driver hide a package there. Still nothing. I was about to call the shipping company when someone knocked on my door. I opened it. Kyle was standing there holding a small brown box. "Looking for this?" I stared at it. "Where'd you get that?" It was outside my door. I frowned. "Your door?" "Yeah. Apparently, the delivery guy thinks 2A and 2B are the same apartment." He held the package toward me. I took it. Thanks. No problem. He started to turn away. Then he looked back. Although, if you keep ordering stuff, I might start charging a retrieval fee. I laughed. What kind of fee? Coffee. That's not a retrieval fee. It's a very reasonable retrieval fee. I shook my head. Fine. I'll remember that. He smiled. Good. Then he walked back into his apartment. I closed my door and looked down at the package. It was just something boring I'd ordered online. But for some reason, I was smiling. I told myself it was because Kyle was funny. That was all. The second time it happened, it was 4 days later. Another notification, another package, another knock. And when I opened the door, Kyle was standing there again. This time he was wearing a black hoodie, and his hair was still slightly damp like he'd just showered. He held up the box. Guess what? I stared at him. You're becoming my personal delivery service. Exactly. I took the package. Thanks. You're welcome. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned casually against the doorframe. So, what did you order? I looked at the box. Why? Curious. It's a phone charger? He looked disappointed. That's incredibly boring. Sorry. I was hoping for something scandalous. I laughed. For me? Maybe. I looked at him for a second. He was smiling. I couldn't tell if he was joking. Probably. Definitely. Still, something about the way he'd said it made my stomach tighten. You always this nosy? I asked. Only with interesting neighbors. There it was again. That little feeling. That tiny pause in my brain where I didn't know what to say. So I smiled and shrugged. Well, I'll try to order something more exciting next time. Please do. He finally walked away. I closed my door. Then I stood there for several seconds, staring at it. I couldn't explain why those few minutes had felt different, but I started noticing something after that. Kyle seemed to appear whenever I was around. If I got home from work, he'd sometimes be coming out of his apartment at almost exactly the same time. If I went downstairs to get my mail, he'd suddenly be checking his mailbox too. If I took the trash out, there was a weirdly high chance he'd be walking down the hallway. None of it was enough to prove anything. And honestly, I figured I was imagining it. Until the third package. That one changed everything. It was a Saturday morning, and I was sitting on my couch watching TV when my phone buzzed. Delivery complete. I didn't even bother getting up immediately. Then there was a knock. I opened the door. Kyle stood there. No package. Just Kyle. I blinked. Where's my box? He smiled. That's the problem. What problem? It wasn't outside my door. I stared at him. So why are you here? He shrugged. I figured I'd check if you were home. There was a pause, a long one. I looked at him. He looked at me. Then he smiled like he'd just realized he'd said something he probably shouldn't have. Anyway, he said, enjoy your weekend. And he turned to leave. I watched him walk back to his apartment. Then I looked at the hallway. Then back at his door. And that's when the first real thought entered my head. Maybe the packages weren't the reason Kyle kept coming over. Maybe they were just his excuse. And if that was true, I had no idea what he actually wanted from me. I tried to forget about what happened. Honestly, I did. I spent the rest of Saturday pretending that Kyle hadn't just admitted in the weirdest possible way that he'd come to my door without even having a package. But once you notice something like that, it's hard to unnotice it. The next morning, I was making coffee when I heard his door open. I froze. A second later, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I waited. Nothing. Then a knock came at my door. I actually laughed to myself. No way. I opened it. Kyle stood there holding a small padded envelope. Okay, I said immediately. This is getting ridiculous. He looked down at the envelope. What? My packages. What about them? How many of mine have ended up at your door now? He thought about it. 4? 4. He nodded. Yeah. And you've brought every single one to me. Seems like the responsible thing to do. I narrowed my eyes. You're enjoying this? His mouth twitched. Maybe. I took the envelope from him. What's this one? Couldn't tell you. You didn't look? I have boundaries. Since when? He laughed. Fair. I was about to close the door when he said, You making coffee? I looked at him. Yeah. Smells good. There was another pause. Then I heard myself say, Want some? His eyebrows lifted. Sure. He stepped inside, and that was the first time Kyle had ever been in my apartment. I suddenly became painfully aware of everything. The laundry I'd forgotten to fold, the coffee mug sitting beside my laptop, the hoodie I'd thrown over the back of the couch. It wasn't dirty exactly, just lived in. Kyle looked around casually. Nice place. Thanks. Feels different from mine. How? Yours actually looks like someone lives here. I laughed. That's not necessarily a compliment. It is. He walked toward the kitchen. I poured him coffee and handed him the mug. He took a sip. Okay. What? This is good. It's literally just coffee. Still. He leaned against the counter. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. And strangely, it wasn't awkward. That was what kept throwing me off about Kyle. Being around him felt easy. Too easy. So, I said, how long are you staying? He looked at me. Here? Yeah. Hopefully a while. Why, hopefully? He shrugged. I like it here. Even with the terrible delivery service? Especially with that. I smiled. Then I noticed he was looking at me. Not at the apartment. Not at the coffee. At me. His eyes stayed on mine for a second longer than normal. Then he looked away. I felt my pulse pick up. Anyway, he said, I should let you get back to your morning. Sure. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned. Joseph? Yeah? If another package shows up, I raised an eyebrow. Yeah? Don't come looking for me. I laughed. Why? Because I'll probably bring it over anyway. Then he left. I stood there with the door half open, watching him disappear into his apartment. That was when I finally admitted something to myself. I liked having Kyle around. A lot. And that was dangerous. Because I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know if he was just friendly. I didn't know if he was flirting. And I definitely didn't know whether I was imagining the chemistry between us. For the next few days, things went back to normal. Except they didn't. Kyle started texting me. Nothing crazy, just little messages. Kyle, you alive? Me. Unfortunately. Kyle, good, need someone to complain about work with. Or, Kyle, you home? Me. Yeah. Kyle, cool. And sometimes that was it. Just cool. But I started realizing that whenever he texted me, I smiled, which was pathetic. Then Thursday evening, I got another delivery notification. I stared at my phone. 5 minutes later, there was a knock. I opened the door. Kyle stood there holding my package. I burst out laughing. You're unbelievable. He grinned. You're welcome. How did it even end up at your door this time? Luck. 4 times? Apparently. I took the package. Thanks. He didn't move. I looked at him. He looked at me. You're not going to ask what I ordered? I said. No. Why not? I already know. That caught me off guard. You do? He smiled. You're getting new headphones. I stared at him. How? The box has the company logo on it. Oh. Disappointed? A little. Why? I thought you had some mysterious neighbor superpower. Maybe I do. He leaned against the wall. I noticed he was wearing the same black hoodie from the weekend. You busy tonight? He asked. I hesitated. Not really. Want to get dinner? My heart did something stupid. Like, dinner? He laughed. Yeah, Joseph. Food. At a restaurant? Right. I mean, unless you have plans. No, I'm free. Good. He smiled. 7? 7. He started walking away. Then he turned around. And Joseph? Yeah? Don't order anything tonight? Why? I'm paying. I smiled. Why? Because I owe you. For what? He shrugged. All those packages. I laughed. That's not how owing someone works. Too late. He walked away before I could argue, and I stood there holding my package, smiling like an idiot. At 7, I met Kyle downstairs. He was waiting near his car. He looked good. Really good. Dark jeans, navy shirt, sleeves pushed up to his elbows. He looked at me and smiled. You ready? Yeah. He opened the passenger door for me. I stared at him. What? Nothing. You look like you're about to say something. I was just wondering when you became a gentleman. He laughed. Don't get used to it. The restaurant wasn't fancy. Just a small place about 15 minutes away. We got a booth in the corner. At first, conversation was easy. Work, the building, our neighbors, movies, music, the usual. But eventually the conversation got more personal. Kyle told me he'd moved because he'd broken up with someone a few months earlier. I didn't ask too many questions. He didn't offer many details. But something about the way his expression changed made me think the breakup had hurt. What about you? He asked. What about me? Anyone? I looked down at my drink. No. No? No. He nodded. Why? I laughed. Is this an interview? Maybe. Then no comment. He smiled. Fair. A few seconds passed. Then he said quietly, You ever date guys? My hand stopped around the glass. I looked at him. He was watching me carefully. There was no joke on his face, no teasing, just curiosity. Yeah, I said. He nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? Yeah. He looked down at the table, then back at me. I wasn't sure. I swallowed. Why? He smiled slightly. I guess I was curious. The conversation moved on after that, but something had changed. There was a new awareness between us. And on the drive home, neither of us said much. When we reached the apartment building, Kyle parked. Neither of us immediately got out. The silence felt different from before. He turned toward me. I had a good time. Me too. Good. He smiled. Then his eyes dropped briefly to my mouth. It was quick, barely a second, but I saw it. And suddenly, I knew. The packages weren't the reason Kyle kept coming to my door. They were just the excuse. The real reason was sitting right beside me, and judging by the way he was looking at me, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Kyle was still sitting in the driver's seat, one hand resting on the steering wheel, the other near the gear shift. I could feel the warmth of his shoulder beside mine, and I couldn't stop thinking about the way his eyes had dropped to my mouth. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it had been nothing. But I didn't think so. So, I finally said. Kyle looked at me. So? You've been staring at me? His eyebrows lifted. Have I? Yeah. He smiled. Maybe. My heart started pounding. Why? He looked out through the windshield for a moment. Then he sighed. I don't know. That wasn't exactly the answer I'd expected. You don't know? I've been trying not to make things weird. I laughed nervously. You're doing a terrible job. He laughed too. Yeah, I know. There was another pause. Then Kyle turned toward me completely. Can I ask you something? Sure. That night when I came over without a package. I swallowed. Yeah? You figured it out, didn't you? I stared at him. Figured what out? His smile faded slightly. That the packages weren't really the reason. My face got warm. I had a suspicion. How long? Probably after the third one. He laughed under his breath. That soon? You weren't exactly subtle. I thought I was. You literally showed up without a package. Yeah. He shook his head. Okay, that wasn't my best moment. I smiled. So, why did you do it? Kyle looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, Because I wanted to see you. Everything inside me went still. He continued before I could respond. I'd see you in the hallway. We'd talk for like 2 minutes. Then you'd disappear into your apartment, and I'd find myself wondering when I'd get another chance. I didn't know what to say. Kyle looked almost embarrassed now. I know that sounds stupid. It doesn't. I didn't know if you were interested. So you used my packages? He smiled. Apparently. I laughed. That's ridiculous. Probably. And kind of cute. His eyes met mine. Yeah? Yeah. The smile that appeared on his face was different from the ones I'd seen before. Smaller, almost relieved. I looked down at my hands. So, what now? Kyle didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached across the center console and rested his hand on mine. It was such a simple thing. Just his hand. Warm fingers against mine. But my whole body reacted. I looked at him. He was watching me carefully, giving me plenty of time to pull away. I didn't. His thumb moved lightly across the back of my hand. I don't know, he said. That's reassuring? He laughed. Sorry. No, it's okay. I just don't want to screw this up. That surprised me. You think there's something to screw up? His eyes stayed on mine. I hope so. My chest tightened. I smiled. Me too. For a few seconds, we just sat there. Then Kyle squeezed my hand. Come upstairs with me. I raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I want to keep talking. That's it? He smiled. That's it. We got out of the car. The walk to the building felt strangely different. Nothing had technically changed. Same parking lot, same hallway, same ugly beige walls. But now I knew. Kyle wasn't just being friendly. He wasn't imagining things either. There was something between us, something neither of us had named yet. When we reached our doors, Kyle stopped. He looked at me. You coming? I nodded. He opened his apartment. I'd only seen it briefly before, but now I noticed everything. His place was cleaner than mine. Dark couch, small kitchen, a couple of framed photographs on the wall. There was a guitar leaning against the corner. You play? I asked. Badly. Then why keep it? Hope. I laughed. We sat on the couch. For a while, we talked about random things. Then Kyle got quiet. What? I asked. He looked at me. I've been wanting to ask you something. Okay. Do you actually like me? I stared at him. There was no joking now, no teasing, just a genuine question. I took a breath. Yeah. His expression softened. Okay. Is that a problem? No. He smiled. Definitely not a problem. I laughed. Good. He leaned back. I like you too. Hearing him say it out loud made everything suddenly feel real. I didn't know where this was going. Neither did he. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. Kyle shifted slightly closer. Our knees touched. Neither of us moved. Joseph? Yeah? Can I kiss you? My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. I nodded. Yeah. He leaned in slowly. There was nothing dramatic about it. No movie moment. No perfect music. Just Kyle moving closer until our lips met. The kiss was soft, almost cautious, like both of us were making sure the other person was really there. Then he pulled back. We looked at each other, and I started laughing. Kyle smiled. What? Nothing. You're laughing. I know. Why? Because I spent weeks wondering why you kept stealing my packages. He laughed. I wasn't stealing them. You were definitely stealing them. I was borrowing them. That's not better. He shook his head, smiling. Then he leaned in again. This time, the kiss lasted longer. And when we finally pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. For once, neither of us needed an excuse. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I opened it. Kyle was standing there holding a package. I stared at him. He grinned. Morning. I crossed my arms. Seriously? He held out the box. Your package. I took it. Then I looked at him suspiciously. Did you order something? No. Then why do you have it? He smiled. Because I missed you. I rolled my eyes. You live 12 feet away. I know. He leaned against my doorway. So? You making coffee? I smiled. Yeah. Good. He stepped inside, and suddenly I realized something. Maybe the packages had never really been the point. Maybe Kyle just needed a reason to knock. And now that I knew the truth, I had no intention of making him come up with another one. The funny thing about finally knowing someone likes you is that it doesn't automatically make everything easier. Sometimes it makes everything 10 times more confusing. For the next week, Kyle and I existed in this weird space between neighbors, friends, and something neither of us had officially named. We'd have coffee together in the mornings. Sometimes he'd knock on my door just because he was bored. Sometimes I'd wander over to his apartment after work, and we'd sit on his couch talking until midnight. And occasionally, one of us would make an excuse that was so obviously fake that we'd both start laughing. Did you need something? I'd ask. No. Then why are you here? I don't know. Okay. I wanted to see you. That happened more than once, and every time it made me smile. But there was one thing we hadn't really talked about. What exactly were we doing? I finally asked him on a Friday night. We were sitting on his balcony with 2 beers between us, watching traffic move along the road below. So are we dating? Kyle nearly choked on his drink. What? I laughed. You heard me. He wiped his mouth and looked at me. Are we? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. He leaned back in his chair. Do you want to? I shrugged. I think so. He smiled. Then I guess we're dating. That's it? What else do you want? A contract? Maybe. He laughed. Fine, I'll draw one up. Good. He held up his beer. To whatever this is. I clinked mine against his. Whatever this is. For a while, things were easy. Almost suspiciously easy. Kyle was affectionate without being overwhelming. He'd text me during the day. He'd ask how work went. He remembered small things I'd told him. And when we'd walk through the building together, he'd sometimes casually put his hand against the small of my back. It wasn't dramatic. Nobody would notice. But I always did. Then one Tuesday, everything changed. I was sitting at my desk working when I heard voices in the hallway. Kyle's voice and another man's. I didn't think much of it. until I heard the other guy laugh. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but something about the conversation bothered me. A few minutes later, there was a knock. I opened the door. Kyle was standing there. He looked distracted. Hey, you okay? Yeah. He hesitated. Then he said, Can I come in? Of course. He stepped inside. I closed the door. Who was that? He looked at me. Who? The guy outside. Oh. His expression changed. That was my ex. I felt my stomach drop. Oh. Kyle immediately noticed. Joseph. It's fine. It's not what you think. I laughed awkwardly. I didn't say I thought anything. You didn't have to. He sat down. I remained standing. Why is he here? Kyle rubbed his hands together. He wanted to talk. About? Us. That word hit harder than I expected. Us? Yeah. I sat across from him. What does he want? Kyle looked uncomfortable. He wants another chance. Silence. I stared at him. And I said no. I nodded. Okay? But he doesn't seem to understand that. That explained the tension I'd heard in the hallway? I looked down. Do you still have feelings for him? Kyle was quiet, for just a little too long. My chest tightened. Finally, he said, Not the way he wants me to. That answer wasn't exactly comforting. What does that mean? Kyle leaned forward. It means I cared about him. A lot. We were together for almost 3 years. I didn't know that. I know. Why didn't you tell me? I wasn't hiding it. You never mentioned him. He sighed. Because I didn't want my past relationship to become the center of whatever was happening between us. I looked away. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. Joseph, I like you. I know. No, I don't think you do. He squeezed my fingers. I really like you. I looked at him. And I don't want him back. I believed him. At least I wanted to. Then there was another knock. Kyle's expression changed immediately. That's him. I looked toward the door. Kyle stood. I'll deal with it. He walked over and opened the door. I couldn't see the hallway from where I sat, but I heard the other man's voice. You can't seriously be avoiding me. I'm not avoiding you. Then why won't you talk to me? We've talked. Not enough. Kyle sighed. There's nothing left to say. I heard a pause. Then the man said something quieter. I couldn't make it out. Kyle answered, I'm with someone. My heart stopped. There was silence. Then the other man said, Already? Kyle's voice became firmer. Yes. I stared at the floor. That one word shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. The man finally left. Kyle closed the door. When he came back, he looked exhausted. Sorry. I shook my head. You don't have to apologize. He sat beside me. I hate this. I know. I didn't expect him to show up. I know. He looked at me. I don't want this to mess things up. I smiled faintly. It won't. He studied my face. You sure? Yeah. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. I closed my eyes. For a moment, everything felt normal again. But that night, after Kyle went back to his apartment, I couldn't sleep. Something about the situation bothered me. Not because I didn't trust him, because I did. I trusted Kyle. What I didn't trust was the past. The next morning, I woke up to a text. Not from Kyle, from an unknown number. You should know what Kyle is really like before you get too involved. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Ask him why he left me. My stomach tightened. I didn't respond. A third message came through. And ask him what happened the last time he fell for someone. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I deleted the messages. I told myself not to get involved, not to let some bitter ex manipulate me. But when I opened my apartment door that morning, there was a package sitting outside, and written across the shipping label in black marker were 2 words that made my blood run cold. Call me. There was no sender name, no return address, just a phone number. And somehow I knew exactly who had left it. I stared at the package for what felt like a full minute. Call me. The handwriting was thick and messy, completely different from the printed shipping label underneath it. I knew who it was. I just didn't understand why he'd gone through the trouble of leaving it disguised as one of my packages. My first instinct was to throw it away. My second was to call Kyle. I did neither. Instead, I picked up the package and carried it inside. I put it on the kitchen counter and just stood there staring at it. Then my phone buzzed. Kyle. Morning. I stared at the message. I typed, "Did you leave something outside my door?" The typing bubble appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Kyle. What do you mean? I looked toward the package. Before I could answer, someone knocked. I opened the door. Kyle was standing there holding 2 coffees. Morning. I looked at him. Did you leave this? He followed my gaze toward the kitchen. His expression changed. What the hell is that? That's what I'm asking you. He stepped inside. I pointed toward the counter. He walked over, picked up the package, and turned it over. The moment he saw the number written across it, his face went pale. Joseph. What? He put it down. That's from him. I figured. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know why he'd do this. Did you tell him where I live? No. Then how did he know? Kyle didn't answer. I felt my stomach tighten. Kyle. I don't know. I believed that, but I could tell he was worried. What's his name? I asked. He looked at me. Ryan. Okay. Kyle exhaled. Ryan and I were together for almost 3 years. Things got bad toward the end. How bad? He hesitated. Bad enough that I moved. I waited. He sat down at the kitchen table. I sat across from him. What happened? Kyle looked at his coffee. He didn't handle the breakup well. Meaning? He kept calling, showing up, sending messages. He'd apologize, promise he'd changed, then get angry when I didn't take him back. I frowned. Did you ever report him? Once? That surprised me. What happened? Nothing much. He stopped for a while. And now he's back. Kyle nodded. Apparently. I looked at the package. Why me? Kyle looked up. What? Why would he care about me? His expression softened. Because he knows about you. My stomach dropped. How? I told him. When? Before we were together. I stared at him. You talked about me with your ex? Not like that. Then how? Kyle leaned forward. I mentioned my neighbor, the guy I'd been talking to. I told him I liked someone. I didn't know whether that made me feel better or worse. And he figured out it was me? Probably. I looked down. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think he'd find you. I sighed. Neither did I. Kyle reached across the table, his fingers wrapped around mine. I'm sorry. I squeezed his hand. Okay. He looked at me. Okay. Yeah. I expected you to be more upset? I am. He frowned. Then why are you saying okay? Because I don't think you did this. He stared at me. I just don't know what happens next. Kyle looked down at our hands. Neither do I. For the next few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. Ryan didn't text me. He didn't show up. He didn't leave anything outside my apartment. And slowly, I started relaxing. Maybe he'd realized he couldn't scare me. Maybe Kyle had talked to him. Maybe it was over. Then on Thursday night, Kyle knocked on my door. I opened it. He looked exhausted. "What's wrong?" He stepped inside. "I got a call." "From Ryan?" He nodded. "What did he want?" Kyle didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "He knows we're together." I sighed. "Okay." He said something that bothered me. "What?" Kyle looked directly at me. He said, "You always do this." I frowned. "Do what?" "Find someone new and pretend everything is perfect." I stared at him. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe. You don't believe him, do you?" "No." "Then what's bothering you?" Kyle looked away. "I don't want you getting hurt because of my past." I stepped closer. "You're not responsible for what he does." "I know." "Then stop blaming yourself." He looked at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Kyle pulled me into a hug. I wrapped my arms around him. His chin rested against my shoulder. "I'm glad I met you," he whispered. I smiled. "Even though you stole all my packages?" He laughed quietly. "I never stole anything." "You absolutely did." He pulled back. "Okay, maybe I borrowed them." I laughed. He smiled. Then he kissed me. It was gentle at first, familiar, comforting, the kind of kiss that made me forget about everything else. Until I heard something hit the hallway floor. We both froze. Kyle looked toward the door. "What was that?" I stepped away from him. "I don't know." We walked toward the entrance. I opened the door. Nothing. Just an envelope lying on the floor. Kyle's face changed instantly. "Don't touch it." I stopped. He crouched down and picked it up carefully. There was no name, no address, just one sentence written across the front. "Ask Kyle about the night he left." Kyle stared at it. I looked at him. "What does that mean?" He closed his eyes. "I was hoping you'd never have to hear about that." "About what?" He didn't answer. "Kyle." He finally looked at me. "There's something I didn't tell you." My chest tightened. "What?" He swallowed. "The reason I left my old apartment." He paused. "It wasn't just because of Ryan." I waited. "What happened?" Kyle looked down at the envelope, then back at me. "I hurt someone." I felt my stomach drop. "Who?" "Someone I was seeing before Ryan." I stared at him. "What do you mean you hurt someone?" "I mean I made a choice that I regret." "What kind of choice?" He looked genuinely ashamed. "I cheated." The room went completely silent. I took a step back. Kyle immediately reached for me. "Joseph, it wasn't with Ryan." I pulled my hand away. "I don't understand. I was with someone before him. We were together for almost a year. I cheated on him." "Why?" "I don't have a good reason." I stared at him. "Did you ever tell Ryan?" "No." "Then why would he know?" Kyle's expression changed, and that's when I realized something. Maybe Ryan wasn't trying to scare me. Maybe he was trying to make sure I knew something Kyle had been hiding. Kyle looked at me. "I made mistakes before I met you. I know everyone has a past. But this isn't just a past." He took a breath. "It's the reason I don't trust myself sometimes." I didn't know what to say. He looked terrified. Not of Ryan, of losing me. And somehow, that hurt more. I finally whispered, "Was that the last time you cheated?" Kyle went completely still. Then he said, "No." And my heart sank. No. The word barely came out. I stared at Kyle, waiting for him to explain. He looked like he wanted to disappear. How many times? He rubbed his hands together. Twice. I felt something sink in my chest. Twice? The first time was before Ryan? And the second? He didn't answer. Kyle. After Ryan. I stepped back. For a moment, I couldn't even process it. You cheated on Ryan? Yes. While you were together? Yes. With who? Kyle looked down. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. He swallowed. It was someone from work. I stared at him. Did Ryan know? No. Then why is he telling me to ask you? I don't know. You're lying. Kyle's head snapped up. I'm not. Then how does he know? Silence. That was when I realized there was more. You didn't tell me everything. Kyle looked away. I didn't want to. Why? Because I knew you'd look at me differently. I laughed bitterly. You're right. He flinched. I immediately regretted saying it. But I was hurt. Not because Kyle had a past. Not because he'd made mistakes. Because he'd looked me in the eyes and told me he wanted something real with me, while leaving out the parts of his history that might have changed my decision. I need some space, I said. Joseph, I just need tonight. He nodded slowly. Okay. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around. I never cheated on you. I looked at him. I know. I wouldn't? I don't know that. That hurt him. I could see it, but he nodded anyway. Fair. Then he left. I closed the door. The apartment felt painfully quiet. For the first time since I'd met Kyle, I didn't want to hear his footsteps in the hallway. I didn't want his coffee. I didn't want his stupid excuses. I just wanted to understand who I'd been falling for. I spent most of the night going through everything he'd told me. He'd said he didn't trust himself. He'd said he'd made mistakes. He'd said he was afraid of losing me. But none of that answered the biggest question. Why had Ryan suddenly started contacting me? And how did he know so much? The next morning, I woke up to another message from the unknown number. You finally asked him. I stared at it. Then another message. Now ask him why he really moved here. I typed, tell me yourself. The response came almost immediately. Meet me. I didn't answer. You deserve to know who you're dating. I stared at those words. Part of me wanted to block him. Another part needed answers. So I agreed. We met at a coffee shop across town. Ryan was already there when I arrived. He looked completely ordinary. That surprised me. I'd expected someone intimidating. Instead, he was just a tired-looking guy in his early 30s, wearing a dark jacket. He stood when he saw me. Joseph? Yeah. I'm Ryan. I know. He nodded. Sit. I sat across from him. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said, why are you doing this? Because Kyle won't tell you the truth? What truth? Ryan looked at me. He didn't move here to get away from me. My stomach tightened. Then why? He ran. From what? Ryan sighed. From himself. I didn't like the way that sounded. What does that mean? He was seeing someone else. I know. Ryan looked surprised. He told you? Some of it. How much? That he cheated. Ryan nodded. That's not the whole story. I waited. He didn't just cheat once. I know. He cheated with me. I froze. What? Ryan looked down. The first time he cheated, it was with me. I stared at him. But you said you were together for 3 years. We were. So how could you be the person he cheated with? Ryan's expression hardened. Because we broke up. I didn't understand. He was with someone else when we met. I felt sick. What? That's why everything got complicated. Ryan leaned back. When Kyle and I met, he told me he was single. He wasn't? No. I stared at him. Then he cheated on someone to be with you? Ryan nodded. Yes. And then later he cheated on you? Yes. The pattern was becoming clear, but there was something else. Why are you telling me this? Ryan's face softened slightly. Because I don't want you making the same mistake I did. I looked down at the table. You're still in love with him? Ryan didn't answer. That was answer enough. So you're trying to break us up? No. I looked at him skeptically. I'm trying to make sure you know what you're getting into. I shook my head. You don't get to decide that. I know. He paused. That's why I brought this. He pulled out his phone. Then he showed me a photograph. It was Kyle, standing with another man. I recognized him immediately. The guy Kyle had called his ex. But the date on the photo was from only 2 months before I met Kyle. I stared at the screen. What's this? They weren't completely over. My stomach dropped. You said you broke up. We did. But they kept seeing each other. Ryan nodded. Sometimes. I looked at the picture again. Kyle was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile I thought belonged to me. Why didn't he tell me? Because he knew you'd ask questions. I handed the phone back. Ryan watched me carefully. Joseph, I'm not saying Kyle is a bad person. I laughed. That's exactly what you're saying. No. He shook his head. I'm saying he's complicated. I stood up. I need to go. Wait. I stopped. Ryan looked at me. There's one more thing. What? He took a breath. Kyle didn't come here randomly. I frowned. What do you mean? He knew you before he moved in? My entire body went cold. What? Ryan nodded. He knew who you were. How? I don't know. But you said he knew about me. I did. How? Ryan looked uncomfortable. Because he showed me your profile? I stared at him. When? Before he moved. My heart started pounding. Why would he show you my profile? Ryan didn't answer. Ryan. He finally said, because he told me he was moving here to see if he could start over with you. I couldn't breathe for a second. I thought about the first time I'd met Kyle, the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd said, nice meeting you, the packages, the coffee, the dinners, the way he'd always somehow appeared in the hallway. Maybe none of it had been accidental. Maybe Kyle hadn't just moved next door. Maybe he'd already known exactly who he wanted to find. I left the coffee shop in a daze. When I got back to the apartment building, Kyle was waiting outside my door. The second he saw me, he stood. Where were you? I stopped. With Ryan. His face went pale. You met him? Yeah. Joseph, I can explain. Can you? He took a step toward me. I swear there's more to the story. I stared at him. Did you know who I was before you moved here? Kyle froze. That was all the answer I needed. Joseph, yes or no? He looked down, then quietly said, yes. My heart sank. How long? Kyle closed his eyes. Almost a year. I felt like the floor had shifted underneath me. Why? He looked at me, and this time there was no excuse, no joke, no package, just the truth. I saw you online. I stared at him, and I became obsessed with the idea of meeting you. My stomach tightened. Why? He swallowed. Because I'd seen you before. Where? He hesitated. At the hospital. I frowned. What hospital? Kyle looked directly into my eyes, the one where my brother died, and suddenly I understood that this story was about to become a lot more complicated than I ever imagined. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Kyle just stood there in the hallway, looking at me like he was waiting for me to decide whether I was going to walk away. My brother? I finally said. He nodded. His name was Daniel. I stared at him. I don't understand. I know. Then explain it. Kyle took a breath. Daniel was 24 when he died. Car accident. Something tightened in my chest. I'm sorry. Thanks. He looked down the hallway. I was at the hospital that night. I was there when they brought him in. I didn't know what to say. That's where I saw you. I frowned. I don't remember you. You wouldn't. Why were you there? Kyle hesitated. My brother was dating someone. I waited. That person was your friend. I felt my stomach drop. What? Your friend Ethan. My mind immediately went back. Ethan. I'd known him for years. He'd been working at the hospital at the time. He'd called me that night, asking if I could come because Daniel had no family nearby and someone needed to help with paperwork. I remembered the fluorescent lights, the waiting room, the awful silence. I remembered seeing a guy sitting alone against the wall, head down, hands shaking. I'd assumed he was another relative. I never knew his name. That was Kyle. You were there, I whispered. Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was embarrassed. About what? Kyle looked at me. After Daniel died, I started looking for information about the people who had been around him. I didn't say anything. I found Ethan's social media, then yours. He paused. You were always with him. I swallowed. So you found me online? Yeah. And then what? I kept looking. His voice was quiet. At first, it was just curiosity. Then I started checking your posts, your pictures, your work, everything you shared publicly. I felt uncomfortable. How long? Months. And you never contacted me? No. Why? Because I knew it would be weird. Then why move next door? He looked at me. Because I wanted to meet you. I shook my head. That's insane. I know. You planned this? I didn't plan everything. But you knew who I was? Yes. The packages? His expression softened. Those were real. I almost laughed. Really? Yes. You just happened to keep getting my packages? The first one actually was an accident. And the second? Also an accident. The third? He smiled faintly. I may have started checking the delivery notifications. I stared at him. You checked my delivery notifications? Only after the first few. That's not helping. I know. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Then I remembered why I was angry. You manipulated me. No. You moved here because you already knew me. I moved here because I wanted a chance to meet you. That's manipulation. Kyle shook his head. I never lied about liking you. But you lied about how we met. Yes. He looked genuinely ashamed. I should have told you. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. Of what? That you'd think I was some kind of creep. I looked away. I don't think you're a creep. His eyes lifted. I think you were hiding something huge from me. You're right. The hallway went quiet. Then Kyle stepped closer. Joseph, everything that happened after we met was real. I looked at him. The dinners? Real. The texts? Real. The way I kept finding excuses to see you? He smiled sadly. Very real. And the way you kissed me? His expression changed. Especially that. I looked down. I hated that part of me still wanted to believe him. Because the truth was, I still cared about him. A lot. But I couldn't just pretend this hadn't happened. I need time, I said. Kyle nodded. Okay. I don't know if I can trust you. I understand. And I don't want you knocking on my door. His face fell. But not yet. He swallowed. Okay. He walked back toward his apartment, then he stopped. Without turning around, he said, "For what it's worth, I never moved here because of what happened to Daniel." I looked at him. "I moved here because after I saw you at that hospital, you were the only person I remembered who seemed completely lost and still somehow kept helping everyone else." I said nothing. "I thought maybe you were someone worth knowing." Then he went inside. I closed my door. That night, I barely slept. My anger kept fighting with everything I felt for him. I wanted to be furious. Part of me was. But another part kept replaying the good moments. His first smile in the parking lot, the coffee, our first dinner, the first time he kissed me, the way he'd held my hand in the car. None of those moments felt fake, but I couldn't ignore the fact that he'd entered my life with information I didn't have. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to contact him. I needed distance. 3 days passed. No knocks, no texts, no packages. The hallway between our apartments felt strangely empty. Then, on the 4th morning, I opened my door and found a package sitting outside. I stared at it. There was no handwritten note, no suspicious phone number. Just my name. Joseph. I picked it up. It was from a bookstore. Inside was a book I'd mentioned wanting to buy during our first week of knowing each other. I turned it over. There was a small note taped to the back. I recognized Kyle's handwriting immediately. "I know you asked me not to knock." "So I'm not." I kept reading. "You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me another chance. I just wanted you to have something you said you liked." Then one final line. This time, the package really is just a package. I stood there holding it, and for the first time since everything had fallen apart, I smiled. Not because I was ready to forgive him. I wasn't. But because I finally understood something. Kyle had spent weeks finding excuses to come to my door. Now, for the first time, he was giving me a reason to decide whether I wanted to open it myself. And somehow, that felt like the most honest thing he'd done since we'd met. I didn't open the door that morning. I just stood there holding the package, staring at Kyle's handwriting. For 3 days, I'd been telling myself I needed distance. And I still did. But there was something different about this. He hadn't knocked. He hadn't texted. He hadn't tried to explain himself again. He'd simply left something at my door and walked away. For once, Kyle wasn't trying to control what happened next. That decision was mine. I carried the package inside and put it on the kitchen table. I didn't open it until that evening. The book was exactly the one I'd mentioned wanting. I laughed quietly when I saw it. I'd completely forgotten I'd told him about it. That was the problem with Kyle. He remembered everything. The little things. The stupid things. The things I didn't think anyone was listening to. I sat on the couch with the book in my lap. Then I looked toward the wall separating my apartment from his. I could hear nothing. I wondered if he was home. I wondered if he was sitting on his couch thinking about me. And despite everything, I missed him. That was the part I hated admitting. I missed him. Not the version of him I'd imagined. Not the guy who'd moved next door with a secret. Just Kyle. The guy who made terrible coffee jokes. The guy who pretended my packages were a personal delivery service. The guy who looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. The guy who had made me laugh when I hadn't expected to. I picked up my phone. I opened our conversation. His last message was from 4 days earlier. "I'll give you space. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "Coffee?" I almost deleted it. Before I could, the typing bubble appeared. "Now?" I smiled. "If you want." His reply came immediately. "I want." 5 minutes later, there was a knock. I opened the door. Kyle stood there. He looked nervous. I'd never seen him nervous before. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He looked at me. "Are you sure? About coffee? About me being here?" I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked inside slowly. We went to the kitchen. Neither of us knew what to say. Finally, Kyle smiled. "I missed this place. You've been here a million times." "I know." He looked at me. "I missed being here with you." I nodded. "Me too." That seemed to surprise him. His expression softened. "I didn't expect you to say that." "I didn't expect myself to say it?" He laughed quietly. I made coffee. We sat across from each other. For the first time, there were no excuses between us. No packages, no fake delivery mistakes, no pretending we happened to run into each other. Just two people trying to figure out whether what they'd built could survive the truth. "I need you to understand something," I said. Kyle nodded. "I don't care that you've made mistakes." He looked down. "I care that you hid them." "I know. If we're going to do this, I need honesty." "You'll have it." "Even when it's uncomfortable?" "Especially then." I studied him. "Okay." He looked up. "Okay?" "Yeah." I smiled. "But I'm not going to forget what happened." "I don't want you to." That answer surprised me. "Why?" "Because I don't want us to pretend I'm someone I'm not." He paused. "I've screwed things up before. I've hurt people. I've made selfish decisions." He looked directly at me. "But I don't want to keep being that guy." I felt something loosen in my chest. "And Ryan?" Kyle sighed. "I'll deal with him." "How?" "I've already blocked him." "Good. And if he contacts you again, tell me." "I will." Kyle nodded. Then he smiled slightly. So? Are we okay?" I laughed. "I don't know." He nodded. "Fair. But we're trying." His smile grew. "I can work with that." A few seconds passed. Then I said, "There's one more thing." "What?" I pointed toward the kitchen. "Why did you actually keep bringing my packages over?" He laughed. "Seriously?" "Seriously." He leaned back. "Because I liked you." "That's it?" "That's it." "You could have just asked me out." "I was scared." "You?" "Yes." I laughed. "You acted like you owned the building." "I was nervous." "You hid it well." "Apparently, not well enough." I smiled. Then Kyle reached across the table and took my hand. This time, I didn't hesitate. I squeezed his fingers. "Joseph?" "Yeah?" "I have a package coming tomorrow." I narrowed my eyes. "You're joking." "No." "Don't you dare." He laughed. "I swear." "You're not allowed to use it as an excuse anymore." He grinned. "Okay." "Promise?" "Promise." The next morning, there was a knock on my door. I opened it. Kyle stood there holding a package. I stared at him. He looked completely innocent. "Before you say anything," he said, "this one actually is yours." I crossed my arms. "Uh-huh." The delivery driver put it at my door. "And you couldn't just leave it outside?" "No." "Why?" He smiled. "Because I wanted to see you." I shook my head, laughing. "You're impossible." "Probably." He held out the package. I took it. Then I pulled him inside. "Coffee?" His eyebrows lifted. "Is that an excuse?" "No." I smiled. "It's an invitation." He stepped inside. And that was how it started. Not with some perfect romantic moment. Not with everything magically fixed. It started with a wrong delivery. Then another. Then another. Until I finally realized that the packages weren't really the point. Kyle had been looking for reasons to knock on my door because he didn't know how to ask me to open it. Eventually, he stopped making excuses. And I stopped needing them. We didn't have a perfect relationship after that. We argued. We had uncomfortable conversations. We had to rebuild trust slowly. But we kept choosing each other. Months later, Kyle still jokes about those first packages. He insists the first two were genuinely accidental. I still don't believe him. And every once in a while, when one of my deliveries ends up outside his apartment, he'll send me a picture instead of bringing it over. Your package is here. Leave it. You sure? Yep. A few seconds later. Fine. Then, inevitably, but I'm coming over anyway. And honestly, I don't mind, because now I know the truth. Sometimes people don't need a package as an excuse to knock on your door. Sometimes they just need a little courage. And Kyle eventually found his. So did I.